The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Politics. I'm Debra Hutchison. Our guest this week is Pickering Uxbridge MP Jennifer O'Connell. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good, still working from home, but happy to be here.
So big news for you. You were recently named Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health. You've gone from finance to health, and what a time to go to the health portfolio.
Yeah, definitely heading right into the the biggest portfolio, I think, on everybody's minds right now. So I think having that background in finance is incredibly helpful. And then the past year, I actually did national security, which has also been a great experience. And so now going into health, I think one, it was an honor to have the confidence of the Prime Minister to put me in this role at obviously a very crucial time. And I'm very happy with the team, and I really look forward to being able to contribute.
For those that are a little unsure, what is the role of the Parliamentary Secretary?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting in the sense that the Parliamentary Secretary usually works with the minister's office, the Minister of Health in this case, with her office. And, I think the big part of my role is helping to do some of that work and consultation, whether it's with stakeholders, caucus members. We also, will fill in and do QP and some media and things like that to help overall with the portfolio. And then a big part of the PS role is being a member of the committee, so the Standing Committee on Health, where a lot of this information will be discussed, and then any health-specific bills are debated and witnesses are called. So it's a lot on the policy side, but also on just like the parliamentary process side. The parliamentary secretaries, help with the minister's office in some of these roles.
So if you weren't already busy enough, you're really busy now.
Yeah, I keep saying to people, I thought it was the busiest I've ever been throughout COVID, even though we're working from home. The constituency work has been busier than ever. And then taking on this role, I kind of joked with my staff that I thought I was busy before. I didn't know busy until now, but I love it. It's been really, really interesting to learn all of these different things in a field that obviously couldn't mean more right now to people.
Yeah, that is so true. Let's talk about vaccines and the vaccine rollout. There is so many stories out there on how it's going, where the vaccines are coming from. Are we getting enough vaccines? Different stories every day. How do you see it? Are we on track with what we expected? There's a lot of frustration out there. Not everybody wants to get vaccinated, but so many people would roll up their sleeves in an instant if they only could. We just don't have the supply.
Yeah, so it's definitely, there's no question we all want these vaccines here. And, it really is, especially with these variants of concerns, it feels like a race between vaccinations and the variants. But I mean, the government has had a plan since we knew that vaccines were going to be an important tool in dealing with COVID. And that started with procurement, but we've always had the issues of local manufacturing of the actual vaccines. So we saw in Europe and in the US where they had domestic production, we saw them ramping up their production, and we actually partnered with European countries in terms of our production to make sure that Canadians could get access to the vaccines. And we're seeing that work really come to fruition, because we're seeing the vaccines, the manufacturing ramp up. We had been telling provinces and territories for the last number of months to get ready. We always kind of knew it would be a little bit slow at the beginning, which is certainly frustrating for everybody, but we knew there would be a significant ramp up. And that's exactly what we're experiencing now. We originally planned for 6 million vaccines in the month of March. We're going to be at 9.5 million. So we're actually exceeding our initial plans. I know for many Canadians, they're going to say it took too long to get here, but we always knew it was going to be gradual. And now that we're in this space, we're actually exceeding our targets.
Just in the last little while, municipally, there have been a lot of leaders here speaking out about the frustrations at not having the number of vaccines. Ajax Mayor Sean Collier, one of the latest. And it just seems like, you know, each level of government is kind of pointing the finger at each other. You know, you talk to, Durham Region, and they're ready to go. They could be vaccinating a lot more people. They just don't have the supply. At the provincial level, it's the same answer. We just don't have the supply. We're working as fast as we can. And it's almost like they're both saying the buck stops there at the federal level.
Yep. Well, I mean, everyone is pointing fingers, and unfortunately, it's not helpful in getting vaccines out to people. But what I can tell you is, from the federal government's perspective, like I said, we originally anticipated 6 million doses in March. We're almost at the end of March, literally in a couple of days or in days, and we will be at 9.5 million. In Ontario alone, Ontario receives the largest proportion because it's distributed per capita. So they've received over 2.3 million doses as of March 29th. And so they still have 300,000 doses sitting in freezers. And so when you look at the national kind of provincial averages of percentage of how many doses they've received versus how many have been distributed, unfortunately, Ontario is lacking. And we have consistently said to provinces and territories, if you need help, if you need additional resources or supports to get these doses out, we will do whatever it takes as a federal government to do that. Ontario has said that they can ramp up to about 150,000 doses a day. We haven't seen those numbers here yet. They've been in and around the 60,000 doses, but they still have hundreds of thousands of doses in freezers. And what they need to anticipate. So I'm glad Durham Region is ready, because Ontario needs to anticipate the fact that we are going to get about 1 million doses of Pfizer every single week, moving forward. We're also getting millions of doses of Moderna, and we, of course, will have Astrazeneca. And then it was just, I think the Prime Minister announced this morning that there are going to be 6 million doses in June of Pfizer. So there are a lot of doses coming quickly. And so we need those doses that are currently in freezers to get out regionally. And we've been pretty transparent on the Government of Canada's website. You can actually see the breakdown of each type of vaccine. So Moderna, Pfizer, we haven't received Johnson & Johnson yet. Astrazeneca, you can see their delivery schedules, and you can actually see the breakdown, by week of how many each province and territory is getting. What we don't have in Ontario is we can't see that regional breakdown. I don't know how many doses are going to Durham versus York Region. So the federal government doesn't have line of sight on, once we send to Ontario, where they go. We would love to have that information so that, as the Mayor of Ajax pointed out, if there are hotspots, that we can understand and kind of, if we need to accommodate But those are provincial decisions, and we don't have any line of sight once we give Ontario the doses where they then distribute them or how. Like, is it per capita? Is it hotspot? We don't have any of that data, but we know how many are sitting in Ontario freezers right now.
Let's talk about AstraZeneca. Of course, we're after finding, that India was going to be sending us all these doses. We're putting it on the shelf here for a while. A lot of concern over, is it safe? Is it not safe? And we're getting different opinions, and people just don't know what to do.
Yeah, I actually had a briefing this morning with Health Canada on AstraZeneca. So Canadians need to understand kind of the system for vaccine approvals. Health Canada is the regulator. They have the legal requirement for the approval of the safe and effective vaccines. They also regulate the manufacturing facilities. For example, we're getting the 1.5 million doses from the US. Actually, I think it's today we should be receiving them. Health Canada also regulates that manufacturing site to make sure that they're absolutely safe for Canadians. So Health Canada has not changed their position that AstraZeneca is safe. They believe the data and the science that exists today, they still believe that it's safe and have not changed the label. They have asked for additional information from the manufacturers around trials around age and gender, because that's where some of the European cases seem to be kind of specific to some of those demographics. So Health Canada has asked for more info.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to get into, so the differences that came out yesterday was NACI, the national, the group that basically is providing advice on immunization. They are separate from Health Canada. They are independent, and it's not regulatory, it's an advisory body. So they have come out with the opinion and that people under the age of 55 should not take AstraZeneca. Ultimately, it is up to provinces and territories to take that advice or not. But Health Canada has not found any scientific reason to date to change their regulatory approval. So I don't know if that is helpful in understanding the two differences. NACI kind of operates on the side of giving cautionary advice. Health Canada is regulatory, looking at the science and the data exists.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. We're going to have to take a quick break. More of our conversation with Pickering Uxbridge MP Jennifer O'Connell after this.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
That's why I see all of them. And if you want to know which ones you should see too, check out the latest Cinema Scene reviews and interviews. They're hot, fresh, and delicious, and they're online at rogerstv.com/cinemascene, popcorn not included. This offer is available everywhere. Tell your friends, be the first on your block to click rogerstv.com/cinemascene. It's so nice, we have to mention it twice.
Think it's too late to become more fit? Think again. I'm personal trainer Karen Ross, and my mission is to help you take control and find your way back to health and wellness. Tune in to A Little Bit Fit with me, Karen Ross, here on Rogers TV.
On the next episode of Cinema Scene, it's a small world after all, as interviews for Disney Plus star and Raya and the Last Dragon soar, in addition to an early review of Nomadland. See you down the road.
This is Rogers TV.
And welcome back to Talk Politics. Our guest this week is Pickering Uxbridge MP Jennifer O'Connell. When we went to break, we were talking about the Astrazeneca. So for those that have already gotten it, there's no cause for concern. Those 60 plus that have been able to get the jab at one of the pharmacies that have been offering them.
Yeah, even, well, like I said, Health Canada, the regulator, still feels that AstraZeneca is safe, and they have not changed their labeling of it. They have, like I said, asked for additional info based on gender and age from AstraZeneca. But though even NACI, the immunization group that is providing advice, even they have said for those that are 55 and older, it is still recommended and safe. So for those who have received it, again, we haven't had any reports in Canada of any of the blood clotting, issues or questions that have been raised in some European countries. We actually haven't had any cases of that. I hope that continues to remain to be the case. But there have actually been millions and millions of doses of the AstraZeneca given out, or in vaccination clinics, and there have been some groups, like I said, or some people, incidents of this, and that's what NACI is asking, and even Health Canada is asking, looking for more info, but it has still deemed safe by Health Canada, the regulator.
Now you mentioned Johnson and Johnson. I think that's what a lot of people are interested in, because it's one dose and you're done. Where do we stand as far as getting some of that here?
Yeah, so obviously our ministers are working every single day to get more doses of, the approved vaccines here as quickly as possible. And so they're still working on getting additional doses or Johnson & Johnson delivered. I think it's set for the summertime, but obviously I think the issue there is manufacturing and just getting Johnson & Johnson ramped up. So if there's an ability to get them here earlier, we absolutely are working on it. But I will just say, this is kind of all these debates about whether it's Johnson & Johnson and the manufacturing or AstraZeneca needing some more information for certain age groups. This is precisely why I'm proud of Canada's diverse portfolio, because we signed 7 essentially agreements with vaccine manufacturers. We could anticipate, or we could plan for, if there were changes in one manufacturer or another, because we still have Pfizer and Moderna ramping up. So by having this diverse portfolio, I think has put us in a good position if there are manufacturing issues or if there are distribution issues. And so that's why I'm really thankful, because you're going to see Pfizer and Moderna ramp up, and then these additional vaccines will just, help our portfolio and get out to more Canadians.
I have to ask you also about where we stand in regards to manufacturing our own vaccine. Canada has been severely handicapped by the fact that we don't have our own manufacturing facilities up here. Where do we stand with that?
Yeah, so we have continued to make investments there in facilities in Montreal, also in BC and in Ontario, different partnerships. There's no question that has been one of our biggest challenges. You and I have talked about this on the show before. So we had made investments into these facilities. At the time, we had no idea when vaccines would be approved or ready and then approved. So we have definitely made those investments. I think we can anticipate some of them to come online into I think summer, fall. Obviously, if we can get those sooner, we will. But I think it's a bigger it's a bigger picture issue as well, that we never want to be in this situation again. And so these investments, COVID has, obviously showed a lot of areas that we can never take our foot off the pedal, and domestic manufacturing is certainly one of them. So we're hoping to get that online, but in the meantime, we're working all of our manufacturing partners around the world, and the US is one that's coming online too.
Now, the facility that will be built in Canada, it will be built in Montreal, correct?
Well, there are a few different sites, so it's different kind of partnerships. There is one in Montreal. We spoke about that previously, but then we have some partnerships with additional manufacturers. So it might look a little different. Like, we'll see how things come along in terms of what they're producing and what they're manufacturing. But I think our first investment was the site in Montreal.
So what vaccines will we be able to manufacture here domestically?
Well, it will depend at the time of when it's finalized. The Astrazeneca is one that we have a partnership on, for example, for domestic manufacturing. But keep in mind, Health Canada has to go through and regulate all of the sites, not just the vaccines. So it's too early for me to be able to say with certainty. But I think, like I said, AstraZeneca is one that we already have in the works, and I know that we're just going to try and build up domestic manufacturing in all areas that we can, but we can't ignore the fact that there's still health regulation. Health Canada has to regulate all of these sites first.
Did you think a year ago, when the pandemic was first declared, that a year later we'd be talking about a third wave?
No, I mean, I think like most Canadians, even second wave, I was like, what? Second wave? Third wave, absolutely not. I think all of us were getting kind of excited. The vaccines were ramping up. They were proving to be very effective. Warmer weather was always, has been helpful. And, but to see these variants of concern take hold, to see the numbers rising across the country and in Ontario, the percentage of confirmed cases now, the vast majority are variants of concern. They're spreading faster and amongst younger people, and younger people are finding themselves hospitalized. I think, now is not the time to pull back on our measures of washing your hands, wearing a mask, physically distancing. So these are the types of things that, as much as we're hopeful because vaccines are ramping up, those other tools to protect people, we're not quite out of the woods yet. And these variants of concern and how easily and quickly they can spread is something that we all have to be mindful of.
My kid asked a good question the other day, and we were discussing, the third wave, and he said, all we heard about until we hit this third wave was, first wave, second wave. He goes, was there ever another pandemic in history that had a third wave, or are we looking at a first time?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, I think this, in a lot of ways, this is definitely the first for a lot of things with COVID. I think the virus itself is very interesting, and the way it has changed with these variants, I think is I'm not a scientist, so maybe unique isn't the right word, but it certainly seems very unique in terms of, we know every year the flu, for example, can change, and that's why vaccines need to change. But to see, I think, the speed at which this can change and the transmission rates, I think is something that is quite unique, and something that we're all just trying to, the government's actually investing significant money to try and understand it. So I know for my lifetime, maybe your kids' lifetime, this is something that we've certainly never seen before.
Yeah. So we're almost out of time, but I have to ask you, you are on the Human Rights Subcommittee. You are a member of that committee.
I am.
Which, I got to ask you, Jennifer, how does it feel to be sanctioned by the Chinese government?
To be honest, when it comes to the work of the Subcommittee on Human Rights and the report that has caused these sanctions from China, which is a report on calling out the Chinese government's treatment of the Uyghur Muslims and calling it a genocide, I stand so proudly behind the work of this committee. And so I wear that criticism as a badge of honor, because I think there are several things, including the arbitrarily detaining 2 Canadians, the 2 Michaels. I think the minister has said the world is watching, and the world needs to see what happens when, we stand up for human rights, and the absolutely arbitrary sanctions, whether it's against parliamentarians or people doing business in China. People need to pay attention to what's happening.
So I have to ask you, what are these sanctions? What does it mean to be sanctioned?
So in their sanctions, they name some specific parliamentarians. Michael Chong is a member of the Conservative Party. They named him specifically. For us, they named our committee. So we're still trying to understand who those sanctions actually apply to, but essentially, they have banned the travel into China and any business dealings with people who have sanctions with any Chinese government affiliated businesses. So it's essentially a travel ban, and I guess working.
Well, you're not going there anytime anyway.
No, I didn't plan on it. And like I said, I think the treatment and what's happening with the 2 Michaels is something that all Canadians need to be outraged about. I certainly am. Yeah.
We've only got about a minute left, but I have to ask you about that. Has the federal government done enough to try and free these 2 men who've been stuck there now for a year?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, the conditions they're in and the reports we're hearing is atrocious. And I know the government, and I think everybody wants to do everything possible. I think something that is somewhat unprecedented is the amount of international partners that we've actually been able to get to help us with this. Having the US talk about it in their bilaterals, having several other countries come out and speak about it is really important, because it's sending a clear message that the world is watching what China is doing. And we are certainly not going to give up until these Canadians come home.
Okay. And on that, I'm going to have to stop you because we are out of time. Pickering Uxbridge MP Jennifer O'Connell, thanks for joining us again. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
You as well. Thank you.
Okay. And on behalf of all of us here at Rogers TV, thanks to you for joining us. Until next time, I'm Debra Hutchison. Stay safe, everyone.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Hi, welcome to Cooking with Corey. I'm your host, Corey Dern, and with me is the fabulous Grant Peckford, Catherine Seaton, Ted Rowney, the lovely Lisa Lacey, Nellie Peterson, Sasha Sudat, Jason Poulter. Hello. So what are we making? Have you ever looked at a recipe and thought, oh, I'm not quite sure how to do this, or not really understood the technique behind why you're doing it this way? And my show is the show for you. That is exactly what you were looking for. The best thing about this is you're actually treating the tofu as somebody who would treat a steak. Where's the salt and the tequila that goes with it? Wait, was that a different show? That's Drinking with Corey. You're yummy. Thank you so much for being on the show.
I love it. Thanks for teaching me how to cut.
Was that 4 or 5? He's lost count and still thinks he can drive. Do you think he knows that when he is caught and charged with impaired driving, he'll lose his license and a lot more?